Imagine waking up in a world where every single moment of your day is designed to give you pleasure. Picture the promise of endless entertainment, non-stop distractions, and countless little indulgences that seem to satisfy every craving you could ever have. Sounds like paradise, right? But here's the question that matters most. What's the real cost? Could the constant chase for happiness actually trap us instead of setting us free? Stay with me because in the next few minutes we're going to uncover how the pursuit of pleasure, something Aldous Huxley warned us about decades ago, can quietly turn into a form of modern slavery. We'll explore ancient wisdom and the latest findings in psychology to see how our obsession with comfort, ease, and instant gratification might be stealing our freedom and even stripping away our humanity. And I promise by the end of this journey, you'll hear an insight so powerful it could change how you see your life forever. In his groundbreaking novel, Brave New World, Aldous Huxley imagined a society where people didn't need chains, prisons, or dictators. Instead, they were pacified with pleasure. A pill called Soma made sure everyone felt content no matter how meaningless their lives had become. Nobody fought back because why would you resist something that feels so good that Huxley argued was the most dangerous form of control? Now look around our world today. We don't have Soma, but don't the constant pings of notifications, the endless scroll of social media, and the lure of on-demand entertainment feel eerily similar? We're being handed our own modern version of Soma, only it comes in the shape of screens, apps, and algorithms that know exactly how to keep us hooked. Psychologists like Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, famous for his work on flow, have warned that while technology can give us moments of engagement, it also locks us into addictive cycles. Think about it. How many times have you picked up your phone for a quick dopamine hit, like a video, a text reply, only to find that hours have vanished and you feel more drained than fulfilled? This is the dark side of pleasure, what modern psychology calls the hedonic treadmill. No matter how much happiness we find, we quickly adapt to it. The excitement fades, the joy slips away, and we're left chasing the next hit. Whether it's a new gadget, a special meal, or the thrill of a game, the satisfaction never lasts. In Huxley's words, we don't notice we've become prisoners of our own desires. So let me ask you, are you really in control, or are you just running on a treadmill that always pulls you back to the same spot? Now imagine stepping into a marketplace where the most valuable currency isn't gold oil or even technology. It's your attention. Every second you spend scrolling, clicking, or binge watching isn't free. You're not just enjoying content, you're being bought and sold. Welcome to the attention economy, a system that thrives on your cravings for pleasure and keeps you locked in an endless loop of consumption. To understand how deep this control goes, we have to look at the brain itself. Neuroscientist Robert Sapolsky, an expert on stress and dopamine, explains that our brains are wired to seek rewards. Each time you feel a spark of pleasure from a like on social media, a quick purchase online, or the rush of a game, your brain releases dopamine. This creates a feedback loop, training you to come back for more. Here's the twist: studies show that the anticipation of pleasure often releases more dopamine than the pleasure itself. That's why you keep checking your phone for a text reply or refreshing your feed for the latest update. It's not the result you're addicted to, it's the possibility of reward. Tristan Harris, a former Google design ethicist, calls this the intermittent variable reward system, the same trick slot machines use. Platforms are carefully engineered to exploit your psychology, giving you just enough wins to keep you chasing the next one. Think about how often you reach for your phone without even realizing it, or crave a snack, a video, a tiny moment of validation, only to feel empty once you've had it. That's no accident. Those experiences are designed. When we connect this back to Huxley's vision in Brave New World, the parallel is chilling. He showed us a world where people didn't resist because they didn't want a pleasure kept them docile. Today we're not swallowing Soma, but digital distractions serve the same purpose: they pacify us. They give us just enough satisfaction to stop us from questioning, creating, or pushing for something greater. And here's why this matters so much. The constant chase for pleasure doesn't just waste your time, it robs you of your potential. Author Cal Newport, in his book Deep Work, warns that shallow, fragmented engagement with technology erodes our ability to focus, learn, and achieve mastery. The greatest rewards in life don't come from easy hits of dopamine. They come from sustained effort, deep concentration, and meaningful challenges. So here's a question only you can answer: how much of your daily energy goes toward things that truly enrich your life, and how much is lost to the trap of instant gratification? Let's step back and look at the bigger picture. The pursuit of pleasure isn't just about individual choices, it's also about the culture we live in. From flashy ads that promise instant happiness to messages equating success with wealth and status, we're constantly being told that more is better. It's no wonder so many of us confuse comfort with fulfillment. Philosopher Erich Fromm, in his book To Have or To Be Warned, that modern society is obsessed with possession over being. We've been trained to believe that owning more, the newest phone, the bigger house, the trendiest clothes will finally make us happy. But as you may have noticed in your own life, the satisfaction never lasts. The excitement fades, and soon enough, there's another thing to chase. This cycle doesn't lead to joy, it leads to emptiness. But here's the catch. This cycle doesn't feel like slavery. It feels like progress. It feels comfortable. And that's what makes it so dangerous. Aldous Huxley himself once wrote that a truly efficient system of control doesn't need to use fear or force. It only needs to make people love their servitude. When you're addicted to pleasure, you don't notice your freedom slipping away. So let me ask you, how many of your daily decisions are truly yours? And how many are nudged, shaped, or dictated by algorithms, ads, and cultural expectations? When was the last time you deliberately chose discomfort, not because it was easy, but because you knew it would help you grow? Philosopher Søren Kierkegaard described this as the despair of the aesthetic life, chasing beauty and pleasure, while avoiding meaning and responsibility. He argued that true fulfillment comes only when we step into the ethical life, a life of purpose, of commitment, of higher ideals. Psychology backs this up. Studies show that people who prioritize intrinsic goals like personal growth, relationships, and contribution report higher well-being than those who chase extrinsic rewards like money or fame. And yet our culture constantly pushes us toward the latter. Why? Because an economy built on consumerism needs you to stay dissatisfied. If you were genuinely content, you wouldn't need the next gadget, the next upgrade, the next fix. That's why advertisers don't just sell products, they sell lifestyles. They make you believe happiness is always just one purchase away. But here's the truth: no external pleasure can ever fill an internal void. Think about this for a moment. How many times have you gotten something you thought would finally make you happy, only to feel empty again a short while later? A new gadget, a big purchase, even a long-awaited trip. The joy fades and suddenly you're chasing the next fix. Psychologist Carl Jung once said people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls. And that's exactly what happens when we use pleasure as a shield. We distract ourselves from deeper questions about purpose, identity, and meaning. The relentless chase for pleasure often isn't about joy at all. It's about avoiding discomfort. It's easier to scroll through endless videos than to sit in silence with your thoughts. It's easier to buy something new than to confront the emptiness you feel inside. But here's the paradox: the more we avoid discomfort, the more powerless we become. Growth almost never happens in the comfort zone. So how do we break free? It begins with awareness. Start by noticing the small ways pleasure controls your life. How often do you pick up your phone without thinking? How often do you choose a quick distraction over a meaningful activity? Awareness is the first step, but it's not enough. We also need deliberate action. That might mean turning off notifications so your phone serves you instead of the other way around. It might mean setting boundaries with technology, carving out time for deep work, or choosing to spend an hour reading instead of scrolling. These actions may feel small, but in a world designed to keep you distracted, they're actually radical. Each choice is a quiet rebellion against a system that profits from your attention. Imagine what your life would look like if you consistently chose meaning over momentary pleasure. What habits would you need to change? What relationships would you need to nurture? What dreams have you postponed that deserve your focus again? The truth is, every time you choose growth over gratification, you reclaim a piece of your freedom. Every time you resist the pull of distractions, you take back control. These decisions may not make headlines, but they shape the trajectory of your life. And in a culture built on noise and consumption, even a small act of resistance is revolutionary. Now let's confront the heart of the issue. The cost of living in a culture addicted to pleasure isn't just personal, it reshapes entire societies. Thinkers like Alexis de Tocqueville warned of something called soft tyranny, a form of control that doesn't feel oppressive because it comes wrapped in comfort. People willingly trade freedom for convenience, autonomy, for entertainment, and meaning for ease. Doesn't that sound like the very world Aldous Huxley imagined in Brave New World? Look around today. We're surrounded by promises of effortless, living, smart devices that think for us, apps that deliver instant rewards and systems that remove every ounce of friction from daily life. On the surface, these innovations seem like progress. But the more we outsource effort, the more dependent we become. And dependence, no matter how pleasant, is still a form of bondage. Here's the danger: dependence disguised as pleasure doesn't feel like chains. It feels like freedom. And that's why it's so insidious. When our choices are quietly shaped by algorithms, when our desires are steered by ads, when our sense of worth comes from digital approval, are we truly free? Or are we simply compliant in a system that feeds us comfort in exchange for our potential? Philosopher Søren Kierkegaard described this trap as living the aesthetic life, a life obsessed with beauty, novelty, and surface pleasures. But he argued that real fulfillment comes only when we embrace the ethical life where our decisions are anchored in purpose and responsibility. Modern psychology agrees. Research consistently shows that people who pursue intrinsic goals, growth relationships, contribution report deeper lasting happiness than those who chase extrinsic ones like wealth or fame. So why does society push us toward the extrinsic? Because a system built on consumerism thrives on dissatisfaction. Contentment doesn't sell. If you were genuinely fulfilled, you wouldn't need the next product, the next upgrade, the next escape. That's why advertisers don't just sell you things, they sell you identities. They whisper that you're only valuable if you buy, upgrade, consume. But let's pause here. No matter how much the world tells you otherwise, no purchase, no click, no distraction can fill the deeper need for meaning. The void left by a life of shallow pleasures can only be filled by something greater, and that something is what we'll uncover as we move forward. So how do we actually begin to escape this cycle? Awareness is the first step, but it has to be followed by deliberate choices, choices that may feel uncomfortable at first, but slowly reshape the way we live. Start with the small things. Turn off notifications that constantly demand your attention. Set boundaries with technology by deciding when you'll use it instead of letting it use you. Replace at least 1 hour of mindless scrolling with something that genuinely nourishes you, reading, journaling, practicing a skill, or even simply sitting in silence. These may sound like little shifts, but in a world engineered to keep you distracted, they are acts of rebellion. The truth is, real freedom doesn't come from indulging every impulse. It comes from learning to master them. Friedrich Nietzsche once said, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." When you have purpose, the fleeting pull of pleasure loses its power. Purpose acts like a compass, keeping you steady when distractions try to pull you off course. Think about the people who've left the greatest mark on history, leaders like Mahatma Gandhi, Martin Luther King Jr., or Mother Teresa. Their lives weren't defined by comfort. They were defined by struggle, by sacrifice, by serving something larger than themselves. And yet in that struggle, they found joy more profound than any quick fix could ever deliver. Psychiatrist Viktor Frankl, in his book, Man's Search for Meaning, laid out 3 ways to find purpose: creating something of value, experiencing love and deep connection, and growing through suffering. Each of these requires us to look beyond ourselves and our immediate cravings. They call us to engage with life in a way that pleasure alone never could. So let me ask you, what legacy do you want to leave behind? How can you use your strengths to create, to love, or to transform hardship into growth? These aren't easy questions, but they are the beginning of freedom. Because every time you say no to a distraction, you're saying yes to your potential. And that potential is what we'll build on as we continue the shift from a life of chasing pleasure to a life of meaning. Let's go even deeper into this idea of discipline and meaning, because here lies the turning point. Real freedom is not about doing whatever we want, whenever we want. It's about having the strength to choose what truly matters, even when it's hard. Discipline may sound restrictive, but in reality, it's the very thing that sets us free. Author Jocko Willink puts it simply: discipline equals freedom. Think about it. When you discipline yourself to wake up earlier, you gain more time for reflection and growth. When you discipline yourself to say no to distractions, you gain back focus and clarity. Every act of discipline, no matter how small, is a brick in the foundation of a life built on purpose. This doesn't mean denying joy altogether. It means rethinking the role of pleasure in your life. Instead of letting it rule you, you learn to place it where it belongs, as a complement to meaning, not a substitute for it. Psychologist Martin Seligman, known as the father of positive psychology, showed that the most fulfilling lives aren't built on pleasure alone, but on a blend of engagement, relationships, and purpose. Pleasure matters, but it's not the whole picture. Here's a practical way to start: build small, consistent habits that strengthen your self-control. Meditate for just a few minutes each morning. Dedicate part of your day to a meaningful project. Limit the hours you spend online so you can invest them in something deeper like relationships or creativity. These tiny actions may seem insignificant, but together they rewire your brain, making discipline feel natural. Another powerful tool: embrace discomfort. Growth doesn't happen when everything is easy. It happens when you push beyond what's comfortable, whether that's learning a new skill, starting a difficult conversation, or facing a hard truth about yourself. Each time you lean into discomfort instead of running from it, you strengthen your ability to live intentionally. So the real question becomes, every time you're tempted by distraction or instant gratification, will you choose the easy path or the path that leads to growth? Because in those small hidden moments, the shape of your life is being decided. Now let's return to Aldous Huxley's warning, because it ties everything together. He didn't describe a world where people were chained by fear or violence. He described a world where people willingly surrendered their freedom because they were intoxicated by pleasure. They loved their servitude, that he argued was the most efficient form of control. Look around us today. We may not be taking Soma like in Brave New World, but the principle is the same. Digital platforms, advertising, and cultural messages are designed to keep us docile, satisfied enough not to resist, distracted enough not to notice what's being taken from us. It feels good in the moment, which is exactly why it's so dangerous. But here's the good news: awareness changes everything. Once you see the invisible chains, you can begin to break them. Once you recognize how pleasure is used to pacify you, you can start choosing differently. And every choice you make to reclaim your focus, your time, and your attention is a step toward freedom. Philosopher Aristotle believed that true happiness comes not from fleeting enjoyment, but from eudaimonia, a flourishing life aligned with virtue, wisdom, and purpose. That means happiness isn't found in the endless pursuit of comfort. It's found in living intentionally and cultivating discipline, and in aiming for something higher than yourself. So what does this look like in practice? It looks like saying no to the easy path and yes to the meaningful one. It looks like turning down distractions so you can invest in relationships, creativity, and contribution. It looks like asking yourself each day, am I chasing quick pleasure, or am I building a life that will matter in the long run? The invisible chains Huxley warned us about are real, but they're not unbreakable. You don't need permission from anyone to take them off. The power to choose differently has always been yours. So pause for a second. Ask yourself, what's one chain you could break today? One small action you could take that favors meaning over distraction, growth over gratification, because that decision, as small as it may seem, could change the entire course of your life. As we reach this point, it's time to confront the ultimate question: what does it really mean to live free in a world designed to keep us distracted? The answer is simpler than you might expect, but it demands courage. Real freedom isn't about indulging every desire. It's about having the clarity to say no to what doesn't serve you, and the discipline to say yes to what truly matters. Viktor Frankl, the psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor, taught that meaning is discovered in 3 ways: by creating something of value, by experiencing deep love and connection, and by finding growth even in suffering. Notice that none of these are about chasing comfort. They're about leaning into life fully even when it's hard. That's where freedom lives. Think about people who inspire you. Maybe it's an artist who poured years into their craft, a parent who sacrificed for their family, or a leader who stood up for justice at great personal cost. Their lives weren't easy, but they were rich in meaning. They prove that joy doesn't come from chasing what feels good in the moment. It comes from aligning your choices with a purpose greater than yourself. But finding your why doesn't happen overnight. It begins with small, honest questions. What legacy will I leave? How can I use my strengths to serve others? And how can I turn challenges into opportunities for growth? These questions may feel heavy, but they're also liberating. Because once you anchor yourself in purpose, the distractions lose their grip. The scrolling, the endless consuming, the fleeting pleasures, they stop feeling so powerful when you have something bigger guiding your life. And here's the paradox. The more you live with discipline and intention, the freer you actually feel. Each time you resist a shallow distraction, you reclaim a piece of yourself. Each time you choose meaning over comfort, you step closer to a life that's truly yours. So ask yourself now, are you living as a consumer or as a creator? Are you letting pleasure dictate your path, or are you shaping a path worth walking? So here we are at the final truth, the insight that ties everything together. The relentless chase for pleasure may feel natural, even harmless, but in reality it distracts us from the deeper pursuit of meaning. True happiness isn't found in an endless stream of entertainment, quick rewards, or momentary indulgences. It's found in living with intention, in anchoring yourself to a purpose that outlasts the highs and lows of daily life. Aristotle called this eudaimonia the flourishing life. Not a life of constant comfort, but a life guided by virtue, wisdom, and growth. And this kind of life isn't handed to us. It's built choice by choice, habit by habit, day by day. That's why discipline is so powerful. Every time you choose long-term fulfillment over short-term gratification, you're building the foundation of freedom. Think of it this way: every distraction you resist, every moment of discomfort you endure, every meaningful action you take, these are acts of rebellion against a world that profits from your passivity. In those moments, you're not just taking back your time, you're taking back your identity. The chains that hold you aren't made of iron. They're invisible, woven from habits, cravings, and distractions, but they can be broken. And once you break them, you'll realize they were never as strong as they seemed. So the question now is simple, but it's everything. Will you keep walking the easy path of fleeting pleasures, or will you rise to the challenge of living with purpose? Will you settle for comfort, or will you embrace the discipline that leads to freedom? This choice isn't abstract. It's here right now in the small decisions you make today. Put down your phone, start that project, have the conversation that matters. Lean into growth instead of distraction, because your life isn't waiting for someday, it's happening now. And remember, this isn't just about you. By choosing meaning over pleasure, you light the way for others. You show that another kind of life is possible, a life of freedom, depth, and true fulfillment. The chains are invisible, but they're not unbreakable. The path is steep, but it leads to greatness. Choose wisely, step boldly, and live the life you were meant to live.